Okay, well, Charles, as I've mentioned on some previous broadcasts, a pretty significant bug. Yeah, we're totally frozen there. So let me see, we're live here. Let me see if I can get these cameras started because we've got basically no cameras on us right here. Okay, there we go. Okay, we got one now. Hello, Charles.
Hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome to Closing In. I'm going to try to bring up our cameras here, but been a bit of a technical issue since this latest software upgrade. I just don't know why it's refusing to connect. That's a troubling issue, and I've gone to great lengths to try to overcome it. So Charles, today we're going to be talking about more than one who have flown over the cuckoo's nest, and of course it's the famous film, as we are apt to base our episodes on famous films quite regularly.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We've got your close-up ready.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, a little bit of a rough start there.
That's all right. That's all right.
Apologize.
You know, we've got to take on everybody who's, trying to make our lives difficult. Hats off to the art department once again. I mean,
Thank you.
there's no way that straitjacket that Crooked is in there is, it must serve double duty as a slimming straitjacket, because there's no way she would wear that size, but
I don't know if she can fit her Captain Pike life support system under a straitjacket. She's got to have those, tablecloth, fashion wear that she's been seen wearing lately.
But the pictures are fantastic. I mean, starting with the former president, who I think, we talked about our last presentation how the Barack Obama Foundation is going to delay groundbreaking until next year. I think they're going to be, it's going to be on the one hand, they'll be thinking about groundbreaking, on the other hand, they could be thinking about rock breaking. Because things are not going well for our former fearless leader, I don't think, and his foundation.
No, huh? There's more trouble down the road, you would say?
I absolutely believe so. I think that when you, and you've dedicated this channel to crowdsourcing the truth, when you pursue truth, objective truth, by looking through evidence that's out there, you cannot help concluding that, and we're not going to dwell on the Barack Obama Foundation today, but you can't help concluding when you look at the evidence that it's a complete fraud. I mean, they started it, they said we're going to house presidential records, and we're going to be religious. A religion, which is interesting. How do you do that?
Has there ever been another presidential foundation that's gotten at all involved in religion?
I don't think you can.
Right.
I don't. You see, because one of the things you have to do when you set up a federally tax-exempt charity is you have to restrict its purposes to be specific. It's unlike a business like 21st Century 3D or the Chart Group, which I said, many other companies which I set up. You always have a general purpose charter because you start out thinking you're going to do one thing and you end up doing something else. And there's nothing wrong with that because you're pursuing a profit. You're trying to pursue a profit. But when you're not for profit, the IRS wants to make sure that you're not, that a million people aren't trying to do the same thing, like let's just say helping children, which seems to be something that Crooked likes to say she's doing, but the children don't get all that much help, as you can ask the people down in Haiti about that.
Right.
So in the case of the Barack Obama Foundation, they started off, of course, when he was president, and when you either have, I think it was after Crooked Eric Holder had left, and as Crooked Loretta Lynch was the Attorney General, and he had the IRS bottled up. He's able to get whatever he could have said. He was setting up a charity to be the new largest criminal enterprise in the world, and Loretta Lynch would have said, that sounds pretty good to me, no problem. So you look at the paperwork for the Barack Obama Foundation, it is so far away from being correct at federal level and then at state level and local level. And they started out, they said, whoop, we're going to house all these presidential records. then somebody asked a question, you're like, hey, where are your presidential records? And they said, well, don't worry, we got them. They're in Chicago. You can trust us. No, there's no crime in Chicago.
Yeah.
Nothing could go wrong there. And now it's, on second thought, we're not going to house any presidential records.
How can they, but isn't that the whole point of the presidential library? How can they change their mind about that?
And that's where there's a common theme here, actually, through all this. I'm glad that you keep circling back to your favorite person, George H.W. Bush.
Yes.
Just trying to get your blood pressure up.
Yeah. My blood pressure is very good, actually.
I know, but not after we get through with this one. So in the case of H.W. Bush, and then Clinton, of course, and W. Bush, and now Obama, there are substantial questions in my mind about what happened to all these presidential records. Do we know?
Charles, you could possibly combine two books. You could have The President's Records Are Missing. What happened?
That's right.
That would be a bestseller, no doubt.
Or we could get, so we don't really yet have, and to the crowd, if you're out there, if you can help us out, we don't really yet have somebody who can do music. But you can imagine a conga line, where you would have, the president's records are missing, and then what happened? And you just get the conga line going through the,
Have a little song going. Yeah, I apologize that I didn't have the music ready today. It's been a surprisingly busy day, and one of those days where a lot of I'm not sure what the software bug is that's causing this camera issue, but hopefully we can get it sorted out. Now, Charles, as you always do, you've prepared a wonderful slide presentation for us today, and I've been trying to do my best to post those slides prior to the show so that people can follow along. Of course, we have Discord chat now for our Patreon sponsors, people who are interested in getting involved in the chat. I will put that up there, so we'll try to focus on Discord chatters if there's information to be shared. And without further ado, perhaps we should show the slides.
Yeah, so here we are. We have CNN and NBC and ABC and failing New York Times and Washington Post. Everyone's still all over. Paul Manafort, the Russian collusion delusion. They're totally fine with going back, with gearing up this Mueller guy to get now 17 angry partisan Democrats.
I like it that it went up to 17.
Yeah, 13 to 17. It's climbing on a weekly basis to go after Manafort. Right before Father's Day, they frog march him back into solitary confinement. This is a matter that goes back to 2004, 2005. So there are all these trolls out there, and I block as many of them as possible on Twitter. So they'll often say, well, what do you care about this Clinton Foundation? It goes all the way back into history before 2009. How come that standard isn't used on Manafort? We're back here on 2004-5 matters with Manafort. And the amount of money we're talking about with Manafort is very small compared to the Clinton Foundation, which is $3 billion known, hundreds of billions all in. Manafort, you're talking about 40 million bucks.
Well, but plus they haven't gone and kicked in the door in Chappaqua and thrown Hillary in jail without convicting her, which they have done to Paul Manafort.
Right.
Like, why is that allowed to happen for even one day, that they just put somebody in jail without conviction?
And the way they're doing it is also to try to intimidate anybody. They're trying to crack the will of other potential defendants, and
Not only that, I believe it was Larry Nichols who brought this up, that by going after Manafort and going after Cohen, they're creating this environment where nobody wants to go near a cabinet position for Donald Trump because they're so fearful that they'll be the subject of prosecution. They're sort of, kneecapping the presidency.
Which is, we're going to get into that. In my mind, that's an insurrection, it's a rebellion.
Yeah.
It is not, the overarching principle, as I understand it, about the way America's supposed to work is our senior political figures, indeed our military and our political figures, all swear fidelity to the Constitution.
Right.
So this isn't a game as happened under Bill Clinton and then happened arguably with George W. Bush, maybe H.W. Bush, and certainly with Obama, that when you get to be the President of the United States, you just make all the rules up and the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. That's not how it works. Correct. Or how it's supposed to work. Yeah, We've got a lot of oxygen being sucked out of the room by people who want to snort and bloviate about, this Russian situation, and try to even today argue that somehow Donald Trump, who's far tougher on Russia than Barack Obama ever was, than Hillary Clinton ever was, that somehow he's enthralled to Vladimir Putin. But really, what I think is going on, I know is going on behind the scenes, is because of your show, Jason, and shows like it, people are now patriots of both political persuasions, fundamentally American patriots, are sick and tired of this baloney. And I do like the way, maybe we should get the crowd to join the the team shirt approach here, red, white, and blue, but, which is not arranged,
Not by design.
by design. But anyway, patriots around the country are they're having enough of this. And they're saying, in a week, it's not even a week since we learned GDP hit the magical number of 4.1% annualized growth in a quarter. I mean, that's a gigantic achievement for an economy that's the largest economy by far on the planet. To get at that growth level when the population is growing at less than 1% is a massive accomplishment. And do these nimrods in mainstream media want to talk about this? No. They want to go back into the minutia, start going on and on and on about collusion and Manafort and this and that. And they're quite prepared to ignore the jump on Trump for the Trump Foundation, $20 million, chiefly of his own money, problems with the paperwork, allegedly. They jump on that, and they ignore this Clinton Foundation, which, as we said, is $3 billion declared, $3 billion.
It's a lot of money,
It's
Charles.
fraud from the jump. Because that's the Clintons, fraud from the jump.
People in the chat are saying they're sick and tired of the Russia BS.
Well, good for them, because they're right.
Yeah.
So the question for the crowd and for your friends to start engaging, I mean, it used to be in the beginning, I think a lot of people who had doubts as to whether this high-profile business person was going to be able to go in and attract the cabinet, then to manage the White House and do everything. How is he going to go from being Trump the builder to Trump the president? And so people were reluctant to speak out in his defense. The other side was so angry that the people were just quieted down, angry and nasty, frankly. But now I think it's a fair question. Donald Trump this morning tweeted out, that this Sessions has to end the witch hunt.
That was surprising.
Well, but I think that's he must know something a lot. He obviously knows a lot that we don't know. But I mean, for him to take the obvious risk that by saying that, everybody tonight at 6 p.m. is going to be saying, obstruction of justice. Here you have it's obstructing justice. He's got something to hide. For him to do that, and then not just timidly do it. I mean, he sent out like 4 tweets, and I think I've got links to them. So the question before the crowd is, are you just going to sit meekly by, or are you going to engage with us, reach out on Twitter, reach out on Facebook, engage with your neighbors and say, look, the guy won the election. You may not like it. He won it fair and square. The next one's in 2020. If you want somebody else to run, get behind that other person. But on the other hand, why don't you start to match up Donald Trump's accomplishments in less than 2 years with Barack Obama's, in quotes, accomplishments in 8 years? And, I think, how much did you pay Barack Obama? How much are you paying Donald Trump? How hard did Barack Obama work? How hard is Donald Trump working? Look objectively at his achievements. And if you believe they at minimum deserve, careful consideration, or more if you believe that maybe a measure of praise should go out to this guy, and thanks for working as hard as he. Let's stop, listening to this Russian collusion delusion narrative, and let's just do the best way to make this work. Turn off MSNBC, turn off CNN, don't buy the New York Times, don't buy the Washington Post. Spend a lot more time on shows like this one and on Free Republic, on Zero Hedge, on True Pundit, on the alternative media. Engage yourself on the facts. Look at the source documents, and don't listen to these meatheads like fake Jake Yapper and the CNN crew of sniveling idiots. I mean,
but people need, you're right, people need to be thinking more critically for themselves, and don't just presume that turning on the internet or some alternate source means you're getting accurate information, because we've seen an incredible amount of people posing as, truthers or alternative news sites that are either so dumb they can't get it straight, or have an agenda that they're trying to push
Sure.
that's against the truth.
That's what I'm saying. You have to seek the truth. I mean, that's. I mean, if you want to have a meaningful impact on the political discourse, you have to get to the bottom of the truth. And one thing I will say, as somebody who's far better with numbers than I am with words, most of the people who are talking about economic truth are, dumber than a box of rocks when it comes to numbers. They just don't. They can't add. They can't subtract. They don't see trends. They just, they don't really understand making money in investments. They don't understand how a region will work, a state will work, a country will work. They just don't get it. But that doesn't let them, that doesn't stop them from expressing their opinions vociferously.
Running off at the mouth.
Yeah. So if we go into the next standard slide.
Yes, the disclaimer portion of the show.
Yeah, and congratulations to you, Jason. I believe you're getting, weekly more and more viewers now, and not all of them are in the United States. In fact, many of them are international, where they may not be aware that in the United States we do have the freedom of the First Amendment.
We're hanging on to it with our little fingertips.
And what we try to do with our shows is we try to give you information on topics where I feel I know something, and I'm not shy about sending my links out to people so you can see the sources, and indeed I encourage you to check this work. If you think I've missed something, as from time to time I do, or if you think I'm not seeing it in a proper perspective, you can reach me through my website. You can reach Jason through Twitter and his website. But it's important to understand that we are allowed in this country to express our opinions, and we're indeed encouraged to express our opinions. And especially if they're wrong, the correct way to do it, the polite way to do it, is say, well, you said this, but you obviously didn't know that, and you're wrong for reason A, B, and C. And then
Right.
a responsible person will say, you know what, I didn't know that.
Right.
Sorry. And you move on, that's how you learn.
Most of the people I'm hearing from just say, you're a Zionist shill, and hang up the phone
That's
or
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But sorry, I was just showing your Twitter page there, Charles, because people who aren't following you yet can follow you there at Charles Ortel. And of course, they can also go to charlesortel.com, a wonderful resource on the internet where you have a load of information. And Charles, what's been really helping Crowdsource the Truth become financially stable is the addition of these only on Patreon broadcasts, and that's a relatively new thing that I've been doing. So in addition to all of the free, non-monetized, no ad programming that goes out over YouTube and Facebook and Periscope and VK.com, where perhaps Mr. Putin is watching, and all the other free platforms, now the people that have stepped up to the plate and provided financial sponsorship for the channel, for the company, have the added bonus of being able to watch a few different shows. We've now got a show with Quinn Michaels. Tomorrow will be the second episode of Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp. Going to be adding a new show next week. So there's some good things happening only on Patreon. I hope that people will go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the program.
It's a good move. So I think we could go right into the body of the presentation. And
Well, sorry, I forgot one last sort of promotional thing, which is, this is now our 92nd video, Charles.
in a year.
In a year.
Almost
When did
exactly.
we begin? August?
Almost exactly August 1st.
Yeah,
Or-
August 7th or something,
Something, yeah.
like that. But we've made quite a few videos, and they are all right here on the Sunday with Charles playlist. So people, and I do find, Charles, even with the shortest presentations, they're worth watching more than once, because there's so much information in there that, it's just impossible to absorb it all the first time around. And also, I find that as you accumulate more knowledge over the year, like Magnitsky Act is being talked about quite a lot since Putin mentioned Bill Browder. And if you go back into these videos, there's little pieces that connect all over the place. So Kennedy, who joined Quinn and I on a broadcast earlier today, and she was talking about how she went back to a video from a year ago and found some important piece that connected to new information. So
Who joined you?
Kennedy is a researcher that works with Quinn Michaels, and she is the consummate crowdsourcer. She discovered Quinn from watching Crowdsource the Truth and now works very closely with him, advances his research. Obviously, many Crowdsource the Truth viewers have been in direct contact with you, so the community is growing, and the open source investigative journalism intelligence analysis model is working very well.
Yeah, and hats off to you for coming up with this and spending all your time on this, and it's great. And I think it really is engaging a lot of people, and it's sort of a lot of fun for me.
Great.
So I thought we'd begin on a lighter note here. I mean, I go through and look at lots of different things, and I enjoy humor, and I was, minding my own business, and I get to this first story. I mean, you got to wake up and be 50 shades of completely crazy to go into the San Antonio aquarium with a baby stroller and steal a shark.
Wow. Is it Shark Week?
I mean, it is Shark Week, I think. But,
oh, well, that's got to be why. That explains it.
But I mean, just you're sitting there, and you imagine you're like, wake up in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, or wake up in the morning, you're still high.
Yeah.
Right? And then you say, I got an idea. Let's go to the San Antonio aquarium and steal a shark. We could put it in a baby stroller.
How could the shark live out of water?
I don't know.
This is a bizarre story.
And it's like those, what is it, the Farmers Insurance advertisement, you probably haven't seen it. It has a bunch of crazy things that they've insured. This would...
Do they have footage of the shark being stolen?
I think so.
Oh, wow. Isn't that... Oh, there's the stroller.
That can't be.
It's going to bite the kid's head off. Well, this is perhaps something for people to dig into at their leisure, as you might say.
That's right.
I want to see this shark get stolen.
I would. Don't try this at home, folks.
I don't know why people can't cut to the chase with their shark theft videos.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps people... This is like Shark Tank, Charles.
I guess. And so then the next one here is this. I mean, again, this story, in hopes that Justice Ginsburg will stay alive, these Democrats are offering, if she needs a spare organ for whatever reason, they're offering to donate one of their human organs on the odd chance that Justice Ginsburg needs it so that she can stay on the court. I mean, this is... get a life, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is just...
transplantation is not always the answer to every medical ailment.
Right.
That is really...
Look at this. Dear Justice, Susan Iorio, her actual name. I'm so happy to hear that you're going to serve until you're 90. If you need any organs during that time or any blood donations, I am A+, I'm your girl.
Wow.
Man.
That's super weird, super weird. We've got a lot of people putting shark emojis into the chat right now, which I like that. In honor of Shark Week, we've got a good shark story there.
And so then, finally, this one. This is funny. And here I would encourage the crowd, I don't know if she's still doing this, but apparently Hillary Clinton decided to accept any direct messages from the outside. And you go down this story, it's too long to actually do right now. Read this at your leisure. It is hysterical.
She won't even allow you to tag her on Twitter. Like when you put up a photo, one thing that I do when I run out of space on Twitter, if I still want to, at Hillary or whatever, you can put a photo and tag. But Hillary Clinton...
Now you can send her a DM.
LOL, get wrecked. I'm gonna tweet this video at her right now.
Which one?
The one that we're doing right now.
All right, great.
Let's see if we can do that. It's DM Hillary.
You know what you should do if you can do it as well?
What?
You should DM her the short one.
Oh, yes, that's the one to send. Wait, why did we not just get her?
It's at Hillary Clinton. There you go. Yeah, and then
look at that. You can send her a DM. Oh my goodness.
Can we send her which one do you want to do first?
Yeah, let's get Mrs. Bill.
And you should probably put that, or the DM would only go to her.
Yeah, the DM will go to her. But people who are interested in seeing your cartoon debut can just go back into the archives of. I just tell her, I think you need to view this video. It has to do with the email server. And we'll just send this to Hill. So just DM Hillary Clinton this very video that we're watching. I wonder if she'll write back.
I don't think so. Then you can send her the playlist.
The playlist, that's a good idea. I'll send her the Sunday with Charles playlist.
And in fact, I would encourage members of the crowd.
Yes, DM Hillary the playlist.
Yeah, the playlist.
idea.
You know, greatest hits. If you like individual shows, you think she should watch?
That's really great.
Yeah.
Why would she do that?
Yeah.
It's like her best idea since running for president.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see if Hillary writes back. That's interesting. We're in communication now.
So this is on a more serious note. This is from the Boston Herald, I think, yeah. And it's very clear, I think, you know, what has been happening here is that Devin Nunes and the Trump team have got Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein and the Justice Department and I think the IRS, the State Department, former Obama people, the senior executive corps, dead to rights. And so what their strategy has been, you know, we just have to delay as much as possible. We have to hope and pray that we get across the line to this election, and then they have to bring out their nastiest October surprises and think that they can claw their way to gaining control of the House. They're never going to get the Senate, but they might believe that they can get to the House, and that's why they're not cooperating. And I think that the counter strategy has to be, actually because it's the correct thing to do and has nothing to do with politics, you got to go after these dirty charities, Mr. President, the FBI and the Justice Department. They are out now soliciting money as we speak, illegally, using the mail, using telephone, using internet, on the basis of false and materially misleading documents. Many charities, the Soros charities, the Media Matters, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the Clinton charities, the Obama charity, many charities are out there doing this. And if you can cut off their money, right, and make an example of these dirty charities, that's going to go a long way to draining the swamp. And here's a little idea that I'm just going to give for free. You know, it's something hypothetically I might consider doing, or maybe I'm already doing it.
Okay.
Which is, if you're a big public charity like the Clinton Foundation, you have to actually get an audit.
Are you going to do the audit?
No, I'm not going to do the audit, but if it is possible to make material available to auditing firms that they would have to consider before performing an audit, which might explain why BKD is out, Price Waterhouse was auditing them, they're no longer auditing.
Because they saw it and they said, we're not going to touch this.
Once you see, you know, the defects, you can't put the name PwC once you know the defects. So a strategy.
But wait a second, is an audit, there's no time that an audit is done and they say, yeah, it's a fraud? The audit is to say...
No, so the audit is the audit has to say
it's
that
okay.
It's free from material misstatements.
Ah.
If you find fraud, you can't issue an audit.
I see.
Right, because what an accounting firm is doing, and again, for the crowd, for people who aren't familiar with this, when I say audit, I'm not talking about an IRS guy or woman coming in, surprising you and saying, you know, show us everything.
That's what I was thinking.
No, what I'm talking about is it's a standard approach that, you know, you have to go, the laws are written in certain states this way, most states. Once you get to be a certain size, the IRS does not allow a charity to submit a return, an informational return to the IRS that hasn't been independently checked. Once you get to a certain size, they want to make sure that somebody's on the hook to check and make sure that A, it's a charity, B, that there aren't tax exposures, C, that there aren't contingent and other problems. And that's the job that you're supposed to do. That has never been done properly for the Clinton Foundation, never once.
Why does that, in and of itself, not trigger some legal action?
It is definitely going to trigger legal actions. And it is, and the in quotes, beauty of this approach is that the big auditing firms have to be insured. right? They have to have insurance, which means that when you go after the big auditing firms for being part of a conspiracy, indeed putting their mark of approval to engender this conspiracy to flourish, they're a deep pocket. And they are not going to say, at a certain point, you know, when it was possible Hillary was going to be president, they thought,
it's a risk they'll take.
No, it's better than that. I bet you the way they looked at it, they said, yeah, we know this is dirty, and they know it's dirty. Okay, we may have problems as Price Waterhouse or a big accounting firm. Now we have the President of the United States, Hillary Clinton. You know, we know how dirty she is. Okay, that means we can do whatever we want. You know, we'll get as many clients as we want. We'll be able to tell clients, look, if you get into trouble, you know, nobody's going to do anything because we have the goods on the President of the United States.
Charles, Margot is asking if attorneys can do audits as well.
No.
Accounting firms.
Well, so an audit, when I say audit, I mean an audit is an independent check of the financial statements of an issuer, in this case a charity. A law firm can do what's called, they call it an audit, but it's improper to call it. They can check your records. And sometimes a law firm will say, we're auditing your legal exposure or whatever. It's not, strictly speaking, the way I'm talking about it, an audit. An audit is defined by, I believe, and I'm not an accountant, but I've employed them, AICPA guidelines define strictly what, there are various types of audits. There's kind of like a quick pass, which really isn't an audit. It's called a review. Then there's a report, that's not even an audit. I'm talking about a consolidated, an audit, an independent audit of your consolidated, meaning all of your worldwide operations rolled into one set of financial statements. That's what the Clinton Foundation is absolutely required to have done. That is what it has never done, and that is what it may never be able to do because it's so screwed up at this point. So, anyway, I think these latest revelations with the FISA documents are, you don't have to put it back up there, are very much revealing and will go a long way to revealing that this has been a widespread, gigantic, and ongoing conspiracy going way back, certainly to H.W. Bush, Clinton, W. Bush, and then Obama, to allow these people, these corrupt, crony globalists, to get together and concoct their schemes all over the world, make their many mega billions, and then the people in government, they'll settle for $1 million here, $2 million there, $5 million, whatever. But it's the Soros level people and the Mark Rich level people who are getting tens of billions, in some cases hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's not a question of party. There's dirty people in the Republican Party. There are dirty people in both parties. There are dirty independent people. And so this game's been going on for a long time. Trump is trying to stop it, or at least to constrain it. And I got to say, I knew you wouldn't be able to watch this, but this I put up here for the few viewers who may not have been able to see this yesterday. And look at this. This is very interesting. Here's a Fox News video that only has 138,200. This is Donald Trump on Fox, and all it has for an hour is 138,000 views. So you put that in context for some of our
they got 1.4 million subscribers.
Right, I'm just saying, you put that in context. I mean, it's interesting that they only get this many views, but it's also, now, you have those are your metrics? Or
No, this is for this particular video here, so.
You can get that on any one of these?
This is through something called TubeBuddy. Yeah, anytime we go to a video, it'll tell you all this stuff.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But this is, we don't want people to drop what we're doing now to watch this, but after we're done, I'm telling you, this is going to end up being, in my mind, some kind of new art form. And if you go back...
The rally, you mean?
Yeah, if you go back, I'm going to share a little bit of history that you may not have known. One of my great-grandfathers is a very interesting story. The short version of it is that his father was a gold miner who went out in 1849 to California and then elsewhere. And he was very successful in the beginning, but then...
Goldie Ortel.
No, Gormley was his last name. His name was James Gormley. And he made a lot of money in his 30s, and then he blew a lot of money. And, he died in bad shape when my great-grandfather was only 14. So he had to drop school, and he had to he was in a small town in Montana, Virginia City, Montana, and he spent three years or so in Virginia City, Montana, working in the newspaper that still exists there as like the odd jobs, whatever. But that's how he learned, around all these newspaper people. Mm-hmm. And after a time, the family said, you know what, these kids are too smart to stay here. So he went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to the high school there, which was basically a boarding school as well as a local school. It was a private school. And then, I'm not sure was it the Madisonian? But the name will come to me. It might have been the Madisonian. But anyway, he ended up graduating, doing all of high school in 1 year, graduating top of his class, going to University of Michigan, top of his class there, being in the first graduating LLM class, law degree. And at that time, way back when, obviously no radio, no television. What was really big was oratory, public speaking. And in fact, the highest paid professor at University of Michigan was public speaking. And so the first, I think it was a national speaking contest, was held, and he won it.
Wow.
And I say all that to say that I think, mainstream television has gotten so bad. I mean, if you think about it, here on mainstream television, what are you watching? Reality TV. Why do I need to watch mainstream television to watch reality? I mean, I could just like turn that off, go to a park, and sit in Washington Square Park and watch it. I don't have to pay anything.
Well, I tell you, Charles, I really do hope that someday we'll reach a production level where we can create a segment called Ortels Through History. And anytime you say, you know what time my great-grandfather, we'll segue to an animated sequence of every single Ortel will be you in a different setting.
Pretty fun.
Could be great.
But he was a poor guy. He actually ran for Congress in the end, Montana, back in the days when there still, I think, is only one congressman in Montana. But back then, this was 1904, the senators were appointed. So the congressperson was pretty important. And he ran at least twice, I believe. He lost every time, unfortunately. And then he died too young.
Yeah.
But
now, Charles, Gitmo Holiday is saying that Bill Clinton is also involved in a lot of European charities, and he was in Madrid a couple of months ago. And can we trust this? And I mean, not to step on your answer, but I would advise Gitmo Holiday that if someone lies to you constantly,
right,
maybe you don't trust anything they say or do.
There is no charitable endeavor connected to Bill Clinton that is worthy of your giving it 1 peso, or whatever the currency is in Spain, euro, or whatever.
Right. I mean, the thing that you and I were talking about just when you arrived before we started the show, that, I mean, again, we've been talking about this for a year, but sometimes it doesn't click until it clicks. The reason why I think all these criminals want to be involved in charities is because that's the misdirect. It's like, oh, how could they be a criminal? They're doing this charity for children, they're helping people or whatever. But that's the cover. It
is actually. And what is interesting when you, I was preparing this whole thing, and going way back now, 3 years ago, I studied the origins of charity, the traditions of charity, how different the Western cultures think about it, how Middle Eastern cultures, how Asian, and this and that. I was interested to learn that in I don't know which branch of Judaism or however you describe it, that whatever that's, I think it's a strict interpretation.
It's expected to be anonymous.
Exactly, and that to me that's your first giveaway. When you start meeting people who need to tell you in the first sentence, I'm a philanthropist, right away. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you philanthropically pay for this meal? Because I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the show is spellbinding, and then in contrast, we're talking about mainstream media. Take a load of this. This is Mika, Mrs. Joe Scarborough. Check out this link. I mean, the
daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski. What is the Finkel blog? I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not Mark Finkelstein. I don't know. Look, Mika Brzezinski is suggesting that Trump could be charged with child abuse over the separation policy. I mean, this is somebody
What?
I think they sit there and they've got a bunch of producers who are, unwilling to say no to these people. And they had 8 years. They had their run because I believe Valerie Jarrett was just calling Mika up and saying, look, this is what you're going to say today. Here's how you're going to help us out. Here's the scoop. Here's this. Here's that. Now, you don't want to take a call from Valerie Jarrett at the moment to try to say anything useful on TV because Valerie Jarrett doesn't have the first clue what is really going on with what the Trump administration is trying to do, disrupting the grotesque mess that she made with Barack Obama of the 8 years from 2009, January 20th, to 2017. But this is just, periodically, when I'm in a good mood, well, I'm pretty much always in a good mood, but when I'm inclined to maybe get upset, I flip on MSNBC and I just, I'm bewildered that any advertiser would be willing to part with one penny, or that these, nimrods, actually collect paychecks at the MSNBC. I'm just mind-numbing.
Are you familiar with this episode in our ongoing series about the strange deaths of various people? This intern, Lori Klausudis, who was an intern for Joe Scarborough, mysteriously died. Why isn't, not Zbigniew, but whatever her name is, Brzezinski, talking about that?
Who knows? I mean, who knows what those two actually do talk about? I mean, it's just...
It's a very, very strange situation there. Oh, came unplugged.
So, now this is a great True Pundit story that I think you sent to me yesterday. Apparently, there is in these Russian indictments, the True Pundit people believe that there's a lot of fabricated evidence, which would not surprise me here.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, to me, the whole way in which Mueller was selected is just, it reeks to high heaven. And it's an example of how not to conduct business. And to a certain extent, shame on Donald Trump for letting it to happen in the first place. I mean, I think Donald Trump and his people were rolled from day one.
Yeah.
And, I think I got my questions about Sessions. He was nice of him to endorse Trump to be the first elected, first senator, I think, to come out for him. But, Sessions' behavior it would have to be a lot tamer to be described as only wacky. I mean, what he's doing is beyond crazy, Sessions. And then letting this, people are jokingly referring to Rosenstein as not Rod Rosenstein, but Rot Rosenstein. I mean, who allowed Rot Rosenstein into the Justice Department? It's crazy.
I think it was Jeff Sessions. Well,
Yeah, he's the deputy. I mean, it was Sessions let Rot Rosenstein in the door. I mean, how could that happen? Where was the vetting team in the Trump White House that said, wait a minute, Rot Rosenstein's got a horrible record. And his wife's got a horrible record. They seem to be oddly connected to the Clintons so many different ways.
Yeah.
It just, I don't get it. And that's not a small miss. As I understand the way the Justice Department works, the Attorney General is sort of the Mr. Outside, Mrs. Outside of the department. And the person who makes the trains run on time, the Mussolini of the Justice Department, is the deputy. So you wouldn't want to put somebody who has suspect ties through his wife, somebody who cleared Hillary Clinton in January of '98 over the travel office fiasco, but then left that off his resume, claiming that he stopped work in '97, and then somebody who ended up in the Maryland DA's office after spending 4 years supposedly watching frauds, but here's the Clinton Foundation fraud.
He just watched them go by.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been spending 3 years and now 3 years and 4 months or so, 5 months maybe, on this. Rod Rosenstein, James Comey, Bob Mueller spent over 4 years on the Clinton Foundation back between 2001 and 2005, when it was way smaller, when it was never audited, when it was easy to see all this fraud, and they missed it. Okay? So then so that true pundit story needs to be read very carefully. And then this conservative treehouse, I love that. I don't know who this person is, Sundance, but I commend this site to people's reading. Basically, this particular article is arguing that the news that came out recently, that weeks or months ago, Mueller had referred to the Southern District of New York the possibility that Tony Podesta and others should be investigated and then maybe indicted or prosecuted. Don't get too excited yet on that. That could be a feint, this analysis goes, that Mueller wanted to be able to hold out the idea that he was bipartisan. So he sends this to the friendly Southern District of New York, knowing full well that people, loyalists, globalist loyalists are in the Southern District of New York.
Will do nothing.
And they won't do anything. They'll just, do the same. They'll attack this with the same vigor that they attacked the Aberdeen
Wiener laptop.
The Wiener laptop, and just let it languish there for weeks.
Just get stolen from a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So okay, so they're saying he's referred. See, because the chatter has been that Tony Podesta has received immunity to testify against Paul Manafort. Is there any truth to that? Do we have any?
Again, I am told by people who do know, and I see it myself just reading the rules, that there's no such thing as a lawful leak during an investigation. While a grand jury's out there, while investigating,
grand jury information.
You're not supposed to know any of that. And anybody who's coming to you with that information, take it to Maggie Haberman, take it to the New York Times, let them to continue to cover themselves in muck and dirt and behave like the slime that they've become. But don't waste a lot of energy on that. I don't think anybody who really knows grand jury information should be telling you. And think about it. If God forbid, we were under suspicion in a grand jury, the last thing I would want, because I certainly believe I would be innocent, win the day and there wouldn't be an indictment, is for all this information to leak out into the public domain and convict me. Yeah, convict me in the court of public opinion. That's not supposed to happen in America. But that's how these slime bucket swan monsters play. And, nonetheless, I think this conservative treehouse thing is worth.
Let's not just gloss over that, because that's actually very important. This conviction of people in the court of public opinion has become the new de facto standard, whether it's Paul Manafort or Bill Cosby and I don't know what the true facts are in either of those cases, but it totally goes against the concept of being innocent until proven guilty. And you're right, it is a persistent tactic that they use.
Yeah. And some balance needs to come back, I think, into the system here. We had a long period of time when I was first growing up when newspapers and the networks had way too much power to shape the dialogue, right? Now in social media, it's the social media shops who may have some talent now, but social media shops did not grow up as news organizations. And there is, I'm not saying I'm an expert on news, but you meet people who are. You're an expert, I guess, at this point. And you meet people who are doing this 24/7, and there's a training and a discipline, and you need to know what you're doing, and you can't take a bunch of
BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed. There's a high standard.
Yeah,
but,
pile of garbage, I think the president called it.
Yeah. But now here's the president. This morning came out, and Zero Hedge picked it up. Let's see how many. This is a big story, and it's only got 1,000 shares so far. But he said, end the investigation right now. There are various theories about why he would do that. In the first instance, I'm told, and I believe it's the case, I've studied it myself, the president cannot be indicted while in office. He can't be. Okay, so the Department of Justice rules say you can't do that. You can impeach him.
I thought an impeachment is an indictment.
I'm saying, going before a grand jury and securing an indictment and getting him, to go to some courtroom somewhere and defend himself, that's never going to happen while he's president. The only thing that could happen is something might be referred from the special counsel, as happened with, it was an independent counsel, the case against Starr, gets referred to the House considers it, do we want to take up impeachment, yes or no? Probably not right now, and you turn it into a political football right before the 2018 election. That, my guess, is what they're trying to do here. That would all be interesting, if the beginning of it had started properly. But the beginning did not stop properly. There is no crime here.
Right.
You can't say, I want to investigate Jason Goodman, I want to investigate Charles, I want to investigate Donald Trump, and start an investigation. You have to say
and
there's...
not only that, they're investigating everybody you know until they find somebody who's done something illegal and said, oh, look, this guy who used to work for Charles did something illegal in 2004. Charles is colluding with Russia.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's just, it would be funny if we were sitting on a mountain of money, not under a mountain of debt, at 21 billion of government debt.
To burn it up on this kind
to
of
burn it up
investigation.
on this stuff and distract people. I mean, it's not like everybody in the world wants to help America. I mean, there are people out there who want the president distracted,
Right.
who want, not focusing on doing the things that he has been able to get done. And I do think the president has an obligation when he sees, his Department of Justice going grossly off course,
Yeah.
trammeling the lives of people like Carter Page and others. It's in Manafort, maybe. You got to stop this. This is not right, and it's out of balance. And I think it was good to put Sessions on notice saying, today, end this. That's a marker down there. And I personally don't believe, and I know the nasty wing of the Democratic Party will argue that Donald Trump obstructed justice by running.
What do you
for
mean?
office. Right? Because the only justice was letting Hillary Clinton, move back into the White House and steal whatever furniture she hasn't stolen so far.
So has Sessions responded to this at all?
I've been busy doing the slides today, so I don't know.
Right.
So if we go back into the body here, I just checked this. This story is mind-numbing.
Chelsea Clinton.
Now, I generally don't do this, but I called the company. This is a story that alleges that Chelsea Clinton has gone on as a director of a startup company that has gotten funding from a very famous firm called Kleiner Perkins, big money, and the story alleges, which I'm checking, that the Clinton Foundation invested in this company. Now I hope that is wrong.
Charities aren't allowed to invest in stuff, are
And
they?
certainly not when you have a vice chairman of the charity, right, at the Clinton Foundation. She's on the board, or was on the board, of Clinton Health Access Initiative. Have the charity, if it's true, the charity invested in the startup and then put Chelsea on the board of the charity, and then, I assume compensates Chelsea one way. I assume she doesn't fly out to wherever this thing is for free. That at minimum she gets some sort of reimbursement of expenses, maybe more than that. Yeah. You can't be doing
Look at
this.
this guy's name, Hans Gangska.
A gangster.
Hans the Gangster.
The other
That's
guy.
crazy.
This is just, we are going to get to the bottom of this, but this to me, for those of you in the FBI and elsewhere, you might want to check this out, particularly out in Wisconsin, wherever this startup is based, headquartered.
Why do they need the home delivery of birth control? Are people so infirm that they can't walk, but they're busy getting down and they need birth control?
I don't get this
I don't
at all.
understand what this company is all about.
Yeah. It's like there's a whole
Nerds.
bunch of these companies. You see these silly ads on cable TV. It's a complex idea, and every one of them has a new short name. Hi, there's two schmucks from Ring or something like that. Two schmucks from
the
Indeed.
doorbell?
One of these different companies. It's the same pattern. Come up with a catchy name. Get one or two millennials to sit down and say, you're not going to believe that we could come up with something that's truly revolutionary. But we did. So give us a whole bunch of money, and we'll steal it. But anyway, so the question is, just to dive into this Clinton Foundation a little bit, they want to try to keep it really, really simple, okay, for the audience. So when people ask you, what's really going on here? The first thing with a charity is it actually the starting place, and it's not going to be that complicated, I think, for the crowd. It has to exist. Charity has to actually exist. To exist, you have to be an association, which the Clinton Foundation did not try to be. You have to be a trust, which it did not try to be. Or you have to be a corporation. Ding, 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 ding. That's what it tried to be. Now, to be a corporation, you have to pick a place to incorporate. You can incorporate in any of the 50 states or Washington, D.C. in the United States. Okay?
Right.
So this is, for those who are interested in reading more, This is a very good book by this famous guy, Bruce Hopkins, The Law of Tax-Exempt Organizations. This is not light reading, but they make the point, a formless aggregation of individuals. That's a term of art in the history of charity. Cannot be tax exempt as a charitable entity. Put differently, Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton and Webb Hubbell and Vince Foster and a whole bunch of people can't say, hey, let's put on a charity, and not have any paperwork. And one day Chelsea is the vice chairman, the next day Bill's the vice chairman. One day it's an Arkansas charity at this address, another day it's, and you can't just say you're a charity and you're a charity. You actually have to create an organization. That's the so-called organizational test. To have a corporation, as I say, you have to pick a state. You then have to write what are called articles of incorporation. Those define what the corporation is going to do. You then have to make a decision. Do you want to go for federal tax exemption? If so, you have to make sure that the organization has bylaws and directors and conflict of interest policy. It has also, and it goes through the discipline of filling out this very lengthy application. We've shown it to you many different times.
Yeah.
And you actually have to jump through hoops. So if you form the thing on October 23rd, 1997, which is when they said they formed it,
right,
you've got to do some basic things. What is one thing that you've got to do? You've got to have the equivalent of the Social Security number for the corporation.
Yeah,
well, they didn't apply for that until December 23rd, 1997.
How can you even open a bank account without that?
Exactly. How do you get a post office box, which they already claimed they had on that date? How do you have, well, before we get to that, these people intended, the record will shows conclusively to me, that Bill Clinton and the machine intended to milk the presidential library by 1992. This is an article in Vox, which is not a right-leaning publication, going through all the missteps of the transition, all the wacky ways in which Bill and Hillary started this thing. It got off to a very rocky start in 1993. Prior to that, there's a lot of evidence that Bill Clinton was thinking way ahead as he ran. He wanted to make sure that he had control over his legacy. We know from looking back into history that Bill and Hillary were guilty as hell. Whitewater and all these different crooked schemes, the cattle future, pork future, whatever those futures were. Yeah. This is a long bunch of writing. This is not from a right-wing site, by the way. And I'm not saying I've checked every word of it, but it's for people who are not intimately familiar with the Clinton family and their long history of getting involved in questionable schemes. By the time, well before they got to Washington, D.C. in 1992 after the election, these people had it in their mind that a charity might be a great thing to exploit.
Yeah.
So if we go back into the slide, we mentioned this book before, this Clinton Tapes book. Again, worth the read. It recounts how specifically in 1992, it gives dates and times and places, how Bill was thinking early on in the November-December timeframe, 1992, so between the election, before the inauguration, he was already talking to this famous author, Taylor Branch, and a friend, about whether Taylor might memorialize, be an on-staff historian to write down what was going on with
the fictional history of Bill Clinton.
Well, and we've gone through this before, but there's hilarious vignettes in this book about Taylor says, okay, I'll entertain that, and they just decided it was going to be a secret arrangement that Taylor will sit with Bill Clinton in the White House and occasionally on the road, and he will give interviews. Now, of course, the interviews that you get to read are primarily the ones early on and then on the way out. The juicy ones I love to read in 97, 98, of course you can't see those yet. But when you get into the book, and I have the book and I've read it, early on he's in the White House squirreled away, they didn't want anybody to know what he was up to. And John Podesta throws the room door open to this, wherever he's hiding out. He says, what are you doing here? And Taylor, it says in the book, he explains, well, I'm going to record the history of the truth of what really happened. And Podesta laughs and said, we don't do that. We don't write the truth down.
He says that.
It's in the book.
Wow.
And then they go through this whole long thing about They mentioned that Taylor laments that this law firm, Williams and Connolly, that sets up the Clinton Foundation later on and defends Bill Clinton from impeachment proceedings, and is quite prepared to have these gigantic multi-million-dollar receivables that ordinary people wouldn't get. He recounts that well, they're going to do it a certain way. No, Bob Barnett and Williams and Connolly, they don't want us to do this. They don't want to run the risk that by whatever Taylor Branch is doing will damage the marketability of the book that Bill wants to write, that Williams and Connolly wants to arrange for their benefit. I mean, this sounds to me like they're looking far ahead and saying, we are going to monetize your government service.
Not only that, the book is a whitewash of anything because they write it down in a book and then people say, oh, well, that's what happened. I know somebody else who likes to write fake books about what didn't happen and then put them out and try and use them as evidence in fraudulent lawsuits.
It's fun, yeah, that's how they roll. So,
it's interesting to see the patterns that this is, it literally is like a playbook that they're all playing from the same book.
So if we hit this link, now remember I told you October 23rd, 1997 is when they set this thing up, right? This is November 7th, 1997. So that's what, 15 days later, okay? And viewers can, I don't know if you can hit the clip or not and then go listen to it, but this is Rutherford calls in eventually, Skip Rutherford, the president of the Clinton Foundation, calls in and says on this broadcast that they had studied 30 locations. This is, remember, November 7th, 1997. They had studied 30 locations, narrowed it down to 6, and that the people who selected the final location were Bill and Hillary Clinton. Two names that are not in the Articles of Incorporation, not in the application, no for federal tax exemption. And he describes this long process on C-SPAN. Again, this is not right-wing television. A long process that he went through. Well, there's no record of that in the application. Who paid for all that? What were they really doing? Could it be FBI? And this is something you can do, particularly in Little Rock. You can go and check the property records for as this process started in 1992-3, as Bill Clinton went from Little Rock to Washington, D.C., check all the property records around the present site of the Clinton Foundation to see who snapped up the property in advance of the Clinton Foundation putting a deal together that transformed a derelict portion of Little Rock. And later in the Clinton Foundation, many of their publications, specifically a press release in 2004, they brag about the billions of dollars of economic activity and vitality that resulted because they put this project together. That's illegal private gain if it was part of a conspiracy. In other words, if Skip Rutherford, who was a big man on campus in Little Rock with his buddies, got together, and said, hey, we got this can't lose investment deal. We're going to put the papers in Little Rock. Let's snap up as much land as we can. Let's do all these projects, hotels, whatever, restaurants around it, our apartments. Everybody will be focusing on the foundation. Nobody will look over here at the billions we're going to make in real estate. And nobody will put all that together. But you, the FBI, you could put it together.
It's very similar to what was done with Whitewater. He used his position as the governor to use state funds to build an off-ramp on the highway to, as you described, derelict, useless land. But now that it was accessible from the highway, they could develop it and put homes there, and the land became much more valuable.
The other thing that's interesting is it talks here, this guy makes a mistake of bragging about how he had spent a lot of time, people on his team had spent a lot of time working with the George H.W. Bush Foundation, which opened right before, I think, the Clinton Foundation opened. And, okay, let's go back. It says he spent months on it. Okay, so that means an organization existed prior to October 23rd, 1997, because you say he spent months on it as president of the Clinton Foundation, which only came together October 23, 1997. Please tell us about all the pre-October 23, 1997 activities. And there are records of those. There have to be in the George H.W. Bush Foundation, right? Because it says that that's what they did. And here's a kicker. The person who put did the transition of getting the records, the presidential records, into storage and then sifting through them and putting them into the HW.
The shredder?
is one and the same person who then is selected by the Clintons to do just that
Yeah.
in 2000.
So why is
Exact
that?
same person. Because that's why I go back to base principles. Where are these presidential records? In the old days, when we didn't have electronic stuff to worry about, the physical records, were in your office, right? You had one copy for yourself if you wanted a copy, one for a vault file, one for a subject matter file, whatever. It's easy to keep track of it. Then you move into this new age where you have email, and they had email even in H.W. Bush. It was not as sophisticated, but they did have it. You can say that's not really a record, right?
Huh.
It's a draft, or it's, use a different name, or you have your personal email and you have your government email. And I don't think they've gotten the system to the point where you can insist, no, everything that was created in and out to, from the high level at the White House, that those are all presidential records. And I think really the way things should change is that no longer should you be able to have an outgoing administration take control of their records before somebody's actually vetted all of it.
Is that not a weird photo of those two men?
It is.
They seemed like they were hearkening back to the days of the Skull and Bones Club at Yale.
Easy.
Well, someone just brought it up, saying that H.W. Bush, we've got Jet 88 saying Prescott Bush stole the skull of Geronimo, hence the skull and crossbones at Yale, Freemasonry. But I think it was it the skull or was it his femur? They stole some bones from Geronimo, and Geronimo's family sued the Skull and Bones Society, and they never got the bones back.
Yeah.
That's pretty horrible desecration of a dead person's.
Yeah, I'm not down with the whole idea of being in a club involving dead Indian bones. I think that's not.
There's a lot of stuff they do that is not to be down with.
So now here's another interesting thing. So let's hit this link here. Now this is the magic of the internets. Okay.
Thank you, Al Gore.
So let's punch in quotes, please. William J. Clinton, Presidential Foundation. And end quote. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Are there any records?
This is the document center for.
Yeah. How many records do you find there? 11 in total. You see the upper right?
Where? Oh, yes.
Right?
1 through 10 of 11.
All right. So then if you punch in, take the word presidential out. Another 5. Okay. Anyway, in Little Rock, there are various ways you can do this. There are hundreds of records available in the public. And these records show a lot of activity. They show that by November 7th, 1997, a lot of work had been done. A lot of understandings were reached between this foundation. Yet it didn't have an EIN, the equivalent of Social Security number. How did it have a telephone? Did it have an office?
Yeah.
You
How can't do anything with that. It's the employer identification number. That's the tax ID number.
And so when you look through these IRS proceedings, which are called revocation proceedings, they ask the basic question: okay, prove that the organization existed as an independent organization, that it had trustees not who were all in thrall to the Clintons, that it had a real office and a phone number and a board. Huh?
We got a website.
Exactly. And
I don't know anything about that.
So how did you do all this work? Who wrote up this application that was filed on December 23rd, 1990? Where's the record that a board meeting actually happened along the way? Where are your filings in Arkansas State? You have to file in Arkansas as well. Did you do that? Right? So we go back into the slide. People such as the FBI, anywhere, but particularly in Little Rock, would be able to look through the records, and there are many more that we could put up, but take a look here at this Form 1023 application. We've shown this before. Okay, this is dated December 23rd, 1997, and it claims here that they did not file for the EIN. They say applied for SS4 filed, as if they only applied for it on December 23rd, 1997.
Oh, wow. Oh, my. I've never seen that on a document where you don't have the EIN and you're like, oh, yeah, the dog ate it.
Yeah. And then look at this form just for a second. I mean, these are the activity codes. We talked about it. They're international is not one of them. But if you keep going through this slowly, it says it's a corporation. It says he's the president, December 23rd, 1997. Keep going. And it says it's going to be an archival depository. It also says, interestingly, it says here it will also undertake and support research and educational activities on policy and historical issues related to the life and work of President Clinton. But if you go to a little bit further down here, it says, the foundation will retain and separately administer related research and educational facilities and activities, possibly in conjunction with the University of Arkansas, i.e. all of the work that they're going to do was supposed to be done in Little Rock.
Right.
Not in New York, not in Chicago, not in Africa.
Right.
And this is something you can't change. This is the essential that it was going to be a Little Rock-based repository.
And I guess that's part of the reason why the IRS is motivated to grant you the tax exemption, because it's going to have a financial benefit to Little Rock.
Right. And here we look at this, the list of the three trustees. Here's Ann D. Jordan, treasurer and trustee. Now, when we look at this a little bit more closely, it dawned on me to say, well, this is Vernon Jordan, her husband.
Correct.
Is that their home address? And of course it isn't. This is the address of Vernon Jordan's work. So is Ann Jordan, was she really the trustee? Or was Vernon Jordan the notorious fixer, frankly, of the person who was getting a job from Monica Lewinsky or trying to, he gets put in by December 23, 1997. He is with his wife. How are they dividing the responsibilities? Was Ann doing 100% of the work? Was Vernon doing 100% of the work? Did they jointly do the work? Why did you list the address at this office? Did you do this to try to shield Ann Jordan's activities behind a veil of...
Is that him?
Yep. He's a famous guy, and he's a senior partner at this law firm. He's also at a big investment firm called Lazard.
He's 82.
Yeah.
He looks good.
So if we keep going down, but they don't disclose any of the conflicts that exist. James Rutherford basically had a career working for David H. Pryor. All three people are Democrats. Okay? Ann Jordan's husband has all kinds of corporate relationships, investment relationships, and political relationships. Ann was the co-chairman of the 1997 second inauguration with Terry McAuliffe. That entity was by far and away, I believe, the largest donor in 1998. They recorded $2.3 million out of the $3.05 million. They don't disclose any of these links. They don't disclose any of the foundations that we talked about before that were set up before this thing in 1997. And keep on going down here, a little bit faster maybe, and you'll see it. Okay, this is additional commentary. Again, they repeat this idea that, that the work that's being done is going to be done in Little Rock.
Right.
Okay, and then we keep going. You can whiz through that. It's all technical stuff. And there's another form you're going to come to in a second here. Here they claim that it would have $10,000 in revenue between the 23rd and December 31st, 97.
Seems low.
See, I think, when you look at this properly, you're supposed to, if they knew they had a commitment from the second inaugural committee to get whatever they got, 2.3 million, they had to know they had that commitment by December 23rd, 1997. Why? Because the Presidential Inaugural Committee was forced to disband, I think, within 90 to 120 days of January 20th, 1997. So I don't think they fairly disclosed the arrangements that had to be there, even if they're soft arrangements, between this Presidential Inaugural Committee and this new foundation. Was the new foundation nothing more than a successor to the Presidential Inaugural Committee? And if so, the Presidential Inaugural Committee was very plainly a partisan political thing meant to venerate Democrats. In the same way, the Trump inaugural is obviously not supposed to, it's obviously more a Republican thing than it would be a Democratic thing or bipartisan.
People in the comments are hooked on Vernon Jordan, saying he got shot in Fort Wayne. back in the 70s,
He did.
and that he's a corrupt Democrat.
That's true. He is.
Anything more on this
Yeah,
document?
just we can keep going just a little bit. Well, actually, we can go on to the next one because we're mindful of the time. But there's a treasure trove of information in there. Now, in this, they never filed here. If we hit that one, they have never filed a 1997 tax return. So if that one comes up, yeah, we go down a little bit more here, right here. IRS Forms 990. Do you see it? Do you see a link for 97?
No, it stops at 98.
So they never filed one for 97.
Right.
Okay, you have to. You have to, and we'll show that in a second.
It's interesting that they're so brazen. They just don't think anybody is gonna find this, or I guess now they know that you will.
Right, yeah, and so we've been through this just to do quickly for our new viewers. You're supposed to, when you fill one of these forms out, you're supposed to do it accurately, okay? So the name of this first, this is not the initial return. The initial return would be for the period October 23rd, 1997 to December 31st, 1997, which they did not file. This is not the correct name of the entity. It's called the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, and it's important that you use the correct name, because if you don't use the correct name, you can end up with what I fear you have here, a crooked foundation that gets itself in position to open up bank accounts all over the place that sound like it's the real foundation, but it isn't.
Right.
So it's not a meaningless distinction to
But
say.
they got an EIN now, Charles.
Yeah, but this is in '99 they filed this one.
Yeah.
They had the EIN but so it's the wrong name, and it says here you're supposed to put a physical address or a post office box if the mail is not delivered to a street address. Okay? The registered office address of this thing was 5604 Hawthorne Road, Little Rock, Arkansas 72207, which was Skip Rutherford, the president's home. And, you know, of course there's mail delivered.
What was it? 5604?
Hawthorne Road, Little Rock, Arkansas 72207. And so, of course, mail is delivered to his home.
Huh.
And so they set this post office box up with the wrong name, William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. Now, query, how do you do that? When you get a post office box, I've checked the application, and I've actually called out to Little Rock to confirm this. When you get a post office box, you have to say all the different names that you're going to be using, that are going to be using that box. And it's a crime, actually, to start sending.
Fraud, I would think.
It's mail fraud, absolutely. So why did they do this? Who made the decision to file the form in this way, and who made the decision to get a post office box before you had an EIN?
It's quite clearly a house. Look at that. Wow, Charles.
Yeah, there it is.
Boy, that's amazing. So on the 990 form for the William J. Clinton Foundation, they have clearly. So wait a minute.
That's the president's
How could
house.
a P.O. box be? Oh no. Okay, so it's a P.O. box, but
The real address, see, the process is, when I talk about the process in Arkansas, Barry, you have to, an Arkansas corporation has to have a registered office. Okay, and the registered office, we know, is that building, 5604. That's Skip Rutherford's house, the president's house. And I could understand if you're going to get a lot of mail, why you would say, you know, I'll have the registered office be my house, but I'd rather have the foundation's mail go to a post office box. To make that step, you have to have the foundation apply for the post office box. You can't go and say, I'll get a post office box personally, and then I'll just let the foundation use it. Okay?
Seems like the wrong road. I'll have to look into that later, but it's definitely a residential neighborhood.
No, it's definitely not. So if you then go down this a little bit, to the next page after this one. Slowly. Okay, so I said you can imagine you'd want to get a post office box if you know, you were getting a lot of mail, right? How much did they spend, Jason, on postage in all of 1998?
$17.
That doesn't even pay for a post office box. Post office box is $40. Why would you get a post office box to spend $17 on postage? Just because you like to go to the post office? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
It just also doesn't seem like an amount that you could spend. I mean, postage should be like $38.26 or something like, you know, odd like that. It depends on the weight of the things that you're mailing around. How is it just $17?
No, it doesn't make sense.
Why even put that there?
So if we go back into the slides, there's a lot of other problems, but I'm just trying to show you now. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Could we go back to that page? Sorry
Sure.
to do that to you. It also says here, if we go to statement 2,
How do we just go
further
down?
down, yeah, quite a way. Let's see, quite a way more than that. No, you keep going. Sorry. Oh yeah, actually, sorry, it was that one. Can we flip that?
This?
This page?
Yes, I think we can.
All right. They said they spent $6,512 on state registration fees, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they then say in the body of the report that they didn't register in any state. How do you spend $6,512 and not register in a state? You know, but say you spent state registration fees. Okay, the reason is they didn't want to admit what they'd actually done. They thought nobody would check.
This says P.O. Box, $40.
Right, but so they spent 40 on the post office box and 17 on postage. Doesn't make a lot of sense if you've got a house. It's only $17.
It's not really getting that much mail.
It's like, you know, why did I do this?
Or maybe they get a lot of mail, but they're not sending a lot of mail.
Yeah, exactly. Could be they're getting a lot of envelopes that come in with cash, and they don't want you to know exactly what's going on with that.
That's
So,
interesting.
if you go back into the slide, okay, we have retrieved so far, a group of us, has retrieved so far by making inquiries to various states, registration packets or signs of registrations in, I believe, 11 states.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the state of Michigan, look what this idiot Rutherford did. Now, mind you, Rutherford is the second dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, right? You know, he signs a document, July 29th, 1998, which purports to be a return for the period December 31st, 96 to December 31st, 97. He signs it on the 29th of July. It's received by mail in Michigan, so they send this document under penalties of perjury using the mail received in August 3rd, 1998. And the document asks the question 26, please attach a copy of your latest Form 990 or other annual financial accounting. And the idiot's answer is, the organization not in existence last fiscal year 97.
So he's admitting it.
Well, but that's a very major league problem. You're saying to the IRS, give us a federal tax deduction, tax exemption, which we started on October 23rd, 1997. You're saying to the IRS, there's a 5-year period where you check and see whether the thing is a private foundation, which only gets its donors can only deduct 30%, donations equal to 30% of their income, whereas if you're donating to a public charity, it's 50%. And they asked for that test to start October 23rd, 1997. But here he's saying, under penalties of perjury, using the mail, across state lines, all federal crimes, he's saying to the people of Michigan, you know, we don't have to file this form on 97 because we didn't exist last year. So if you didn't exist last year, how did you file your application for federal tax exemption? And this is, we have more than the one state. I didn't want to, you make the point with one state, we have it with multiple states where he did this, and it's, I think in this case it's just Rutherford signing it. In other cases, other trustees also join in this fraud. So you don't have to be an expert on charities to look at this and say, not a valid corporation, controlled by Hillary and Bill Clinton, operated well between October 23rd, 1997, not independent, hence it fails the organizational test. And this isn't like, you know, 3 strikes and you're out kind of stuff.
You've just done a federal crime.
You're done.
Yeah.
You fail the organizational test. The other test is called the operational test. You have to pass them both. You failed the organizational test, you're not a real organization. But now let's go and see for fun, you know, something that rhymes with hits and giggles. Let's look at the operational test to see if they failed that one too, all right? So again, to make this easy for people, you can download this stuff. Hopefully you have a color printer and you can see that. We do it in color to make it easier for you to determine what's good and what's bad. And you know, nothing against red, but red's bad.
Is there any way to interview that guy, Bill, what's his name?
Skip Rutherford?
Skip Rutherford.
I think you'd have to get, you know.
Is he dead?
No, he's very much alive. But I don't think he will be very happy to be interviewed.
Is he in Little Rock?
He's definitely a little
I'm going to try to go interview that guy. Be like, so what's up?
What's yeah,
With
good
all
luck with that. So, the operational tests, okay? An organization will be regarded as operated exclusively for one or more tax-exempt purposes only if it engages primarily in activities that accomplish the actual exempt purposes. An organization will not be so regarded if more than an insubstantial part of its activities does not further an exempt purpose. This is belt and suspenders charity law. In other words, what this is saying is when you put in your application that you're going to be a Little Rock-based presidential records repository and a research center, that's what you have to do. You can't then say, you know, actually I'd rather fight HIV and AIDS, or actually I'd rather, you know, do stuff in Ireland or Dubai, or, you know, do something in Harlem.
Build a mini golf course on the roof.
Fly around the world and write that. You can't do that. And the test of whether you've gone astray in the operational test is whether more than an insubstantial part of its activities do not further the exempt purpose. In other words, if you go and you say, why don't we spend $100,000 to let our employees go out to meals because they worked hard, you know, around the world because we like them. That is more than an insubstantial part of its activities. Insubstantial has been held in multiple rulings to be an amount less than $1,000. So in other words, if you spend more than $1,000 on activities that are not part of your authorized purposes, you've broken the operational test. Okay? Think about this.
So even building this elaborate roof garden, because
Definitely.
it's so expensive, it doesn't
Yeah.
put into this operational test, so you can't do
Right,
it.
right. So the let's look at this. The letter that basically helps you understand what you are and what you're not is this so-called determination letter. If we hit this link here, there are two determination letters. Until very recently, in 2015-16, they tried to hide this letter. This is the original.
You do have to hand it to them, Charles. They are very determined
Yeah.
to steal money.
So here you see this letter was issued January 29th, 1998. Okay, and you see that it says that you're a specific type of foundation status, a 509A1, and that this period, what they're trying to do is test in this initial period. We don't know how much of the money coming in is going to be from the public at large and how much is going to come from rich people. So they have a test. And the test period contemplates the 69 days in 1997 when Rutherford says to Michigan, we didn't exist, but when Rutherford says to the IRS, we did exist. So it's crucial, this October 23, 1997 period is crucial because that shortens, by the math, it shortens the period of time where you're testing to see am I publicly supported or not publicly supported. If you're deemed to be publicly supported, you know, let's say you're a rich person and you give this money to a public charity personally, you're able to take a bigger proportion of your income as tax donation, as tax deductible expenses, if you give it to a valid public charity. But if it's not a valid public charity, private foundation or worse, then you have just, by this monkey business, you have cost we the taxpayers money by this approach. So it's not a minor thing we're talking about here. This is the original letter, okay? And note it went to the, you see, it didn't go to William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation.
Right.
The William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. If we go back into the slide, I've listed some of the language here, and this is key. And people like to read this stuff quickly. You can't read it quickly. The letter was issued the 29th January 1998, and it says, based on the information you supplied. In other words, the information in the application has to be true and correct. Okay? That information, and then it says, and assuming your operations will be as stated in your application for recognition of an exemption, right?
Yeah.
We will describe you as a, quote, organization, right? A real organization, because you are one, but in this case, they weren't an organization.
Disorganization.
They didn't talk about all their related party conflicts with Ann Jordan, with Vernon Jordan, with the Clinton operations, the fact that it was under the thrall of the Clintons, that it wasn't really independent, the fact that it was an overwhelming majority, 75% of the money they were going to take in their first year was going to come from a connected partisan activity. The fact that David H. Pryor would decide right after January 29th, 1998, They knew this beforehand, but right after that date, they constitute this Presidential Legal Expense Trust. And who do they put in charge of that? David H. Pryor. And they don't tell the IRS, look, we've got 3 trustees. One of them was co-chairman of the largest donor in 1998 of partisan activity. And the other one is going to leave this partisan activity to raise money in a mass mailing to pay off legal debts, and is going to claim that that's charitable activity when it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, so this thing is stillborn, I would argue.
DOA.
Exactly. And then, as I said, this is supposed to be a publicly supported organization. Think of it, it's supposed to be a library. It's supposed to be open to the general public. It is not supposed to be something that only Clinton partisans go to. It's supposed to have a board that says, no, you can't, we're going to look at the Clinton period. We're going to have all of the presidential records are supposed to be there. If the Clinton family wants to give more records, that's fine. But the bulk, the corpus of this thing is taxpayer-funded records that were created or received during the Clinton presidency. Those have to be open to scholars of all disciplines. And this is a specific, narrow type of publicly supported organization. It's called a Section 509A1 and a Section 170BA6. So it has very precise things it's supposed to be. It's got to have an independent board. This has never had an independent board. Okay? Then it says, in terms of when you change your activities, it says here, if you change your sources of support, in other words, they say they're going to get all their money in the application by making a limited number of personal appeals. That doesn't work very well. They only get 3 people to give them money in the first year. So they switch. They switch, and they become this mass mailing thing, but they don't tell the IRS that they've switched. If you change your purposes, if you go from being a Little Rock-based archival facility and research center to now having a big swank, multiple offices in New York City and around the world, flying first class, corporate jets and stuff around the world, to try to fight HIV/AIDS.
It's one of the best known charities there is.
And it's highly rated by Charity Navigator as well. I mean, that doesn't mean. So it says here, if you change your purposes, your character, or your method of operation, please let us know. This is in the nice little transmittal letter. But in the strict regulations, in the IRS tax forms, it says you absolutely have to let people know in advance if you're going to change, right? And they didn't do any of that. Now, why did they care? Because in 97, 98, he was the president. Right? He got through impeachment, and they thought Al Gore was going to follow him.
It's a good piece of evidence in terms of establishing the pattern and practice where they just flagrantly violate the law without concern because they're going to have their man in office. Or woman, right. But that's obviously what all these Rod Rosenstein and all these guys were in. They're like, we can do whatever the hell we want. Hillary's going to be the president.
Right. And this pattern and practice of abusing the presidential records likely goes back to George H.W. Bush, may go back further than that, certainly encompasses Bill Clinton, likely encompasses George W., and definitely, all this. We're searching for MH370, we're searching for these missing airplanes. How come nobody is, we got this monstrosity of a campus in Chicago to house all these presidential records, and then when that becomes an issue, whoops, there are no presidential records. How come somebody doesn't say, now wait a minute, you guys are on the Blackberries, memos.
Maybe
Clinton,
it's all on the Malaysian aircraft.
That's what happened. So there are, we have been working on this now for a while, going over our ground. Just staying on that briefly, at the bottom, there's a mountain, literally, of evidence that's out there in the public domain. I don't have the ability to access specific bank account information the way HINT, the FBI does, but there's details in these state filings of the account numbers and multiple accounts. It should be possible, I'm told by experts, that if you have a bank account number and a location and the name of the person, you can go back 20, 30 years and get information on most bank accounts. If you're the FBI.
If you're the cops, right. Yeah,
and so it should be possible to construct and reconstruct at an atomic level, an elemental level, as opposed to the overview level that I'm on.
Right.
When this money came in, did Denise Rich, who sent $250,000, did she send it from a New York account, a Virginia account? Did she send it to a recipient account in New York? If so, how did the Clinton Foundation open in '98 an account in New York? or did it go across state lines to Arkansas?
That's pretty much the best question, is that if they didn't have an EIN number but they were receiving money, what bank account did it go to?
The Bank of Slime.
But I mean, is it Bill Clinton's personal account? Is it,
again,
like, we don't know, right?
That's right. Exactly.
We don't know what happened, John.
Right. Yet.
Wow.
Yet. We still don't know what happened.
Amazing.
So then, if we do now go to the next page. All right. I'm going to tell you what you're supposed to do, and then we can figure out and see how close that is to what they actually did. So a publicly supported...
not close at all.
Nah, not in the same... It's in the alternative universe where Hillary's president of the United States.
That's right.
So it's supposed to be an organization, right? Not Jason and Charles, messing around, whatever, on the Sunday with Charles show. We're not an organization. Sunday with Charles is not an organization.
Right. It's a branded show.
It's a show, that's all it is. But to be a charity, to get tax exemption, you have to be a straight up organization. Corporation, association, trust, and most importantly, you have to have an independent board. A board powerful enough to say to Bill and Hillary Clinton, no, you're not getting a penthouse on top of this presidential archive. You're not going to build it out. You're not going to restrict its use only to Bill and his bimbos. That's not the way it's going to work. You're not going to have a catering hall. You're not going to have a swimming pool. You're not going to go around the world on foundation business, flying in corporate jets and living in presidential suites at the expense of donors. You can't do that.
To be fair, I think all bimbos are welcome. So it's, it's
no, not in foundations.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. So, and here, if we just hit this link here, this second one, we've shown this before. You shouldn't have to write this memo, but somebody in the IRS wrote this memo explaining that activities that are illegal or contrary to public policy are activities that you can't pursue as a charity.
That's like so stupid.
I know, but you gotta get them.
You can't have a charity that's selling cocaine? Oh.
Yeah, I think they cite in here somewhere the example of a branch of the mafia trying to set up a charity and seriously going, and the IRS like, guys.
Well, see, I mean, that's just it. What we're realizing is that these charities are absolutely like magnets to criminals, because obviously the assumption is if you're involved in charitable stuff, you're a nice person, and how could you be a criminal?
Right. Well, that seems to be what a lot of people have been doing here. So this is a memo of the doubters among you. Read this. You still don't believe what we're saying. There are other memos on this subject. It should be fairly obvious that a charity that stands in the shoes of government, supposedly a good government, will not engage in illegal activities. So let's see why I hit this link here. Oh yeah. There are bigger problems than just simply making false statements, but the Clinton Foundation, I will go out on a limb here and say, the Clinton Foundation has never filed a statement under oath that has been accurate. Not one. No application for federal tax exemption, no annual report, no request for tax extension. And this is at federal level. At state level, same issue. International level, same issue. So when the FBI is thinking about it, the Department of Justice is saying, well, what crimes can we go for, and what's the statute of limitations? How many counts are there? So you file it across state lines. Then you fail to file the 97. Then you file a false one for 98. You file it across state lines in Ogden, Utah. Then you say on the form that you didn't need to send a copy of that to any other state, but you do send it to California and New York and a whole bunch of other states, because you actually did have to do it. That's why you spent the $6,500 to register, because you had to do it. Anyway, the number of false and materially misleading statements that these people, they don't know how to do it any other way.
It's a pathology.
Right.
It's really...
It really is a pathological liar, John Lovitz.
Yeah.
I mean, he should be the mascot for the Clinton Foundation.
You could raise money for them, for
yeah,
sure.
Exactly. In fact, that would be pretty funny to do a fake ad using
why
John
don't you
Lovitz.
Donate to my charity. That's it. Yeah.
Now, here we have this issue of illegal private gains and annulment. Uh-oh. That's weird. So it didn't happen earlier.
It's interesting. 5XX response. I've never heard of that before.
Anyway,
oh no, you know what might fix it actually? Hang on, give me 1 second. Sometimes there's a strange bit of business that goes on when we go from Microsoft Word to PDF, and I don't know why that is, but I think we can
undo that, maybe?
Well, if we access it, let's just see if we can make this a reality. Which one is it?
Before this, it was this one.
Huh. Same thing.
Anyway, well, that link used to work, and those, if you
just earlier today, huh?
Yeah, if you go, if we go into Google and we do inurement and private gain, it's spelled with an I, I-N-U-R-E, yep, and then private gain as well. Private benefit, otherwise. This is the thing right here. Huh. So the IRS doesn't want us to know that
That's weird.
It could just be, it says maintenance. Could be system maintenance.
Maintenance, I see.
System maintenance is going to happen until the election, I guess. But anyway.
Well.
So if we go back into the slide, let's see if this happens. Here's somebody talking about explaining what diversion is. So diversion is what the Clintons don't want you to think about, okay? Diversion is when you send me money for a library, and I know I don't have to fill the form. You send it to me, let's say, in January of '98, and I know I don't have to fill a form until November 15th, 1999. So I take your money, I cash your check, a crooked bank, crooked board, whatever. I go to Las Vegas, I gamble, and I'm a very good gambler. I'm not a gambler, but let's imagine I'm a great gambler. I take your 10,000 bucks, I turn it into 2 million.
Wow, well done.
Exactly. And then I said, this is a pretty good deal. So why don't I take the 2 million, I gamble that, I turn it into 50,000, and now I can pay my hotel bill, so now I'm down to whatever, and then I get it. Anyway, you get the point. You can't take your money, and even if at the end of the day, I actually put 10,000 of my winnings out of your money into the foundation,
all of that use it for other purposes.
All of that activity is what's called a diversion. You can't, as a charity,
invest it in some
whatever.
HIV delivery company.
Even if it sounds good, you cure cancer, whatever. You got to. If I raise money from you for a tax-exempt purpose, which is building this thing, that's what I got to do. And this is an article that explains that in some significant detail if people are interested in it. So the question is not, did I take the donor's money and do something useful with it? Even if I did that,
still not good.
It's actually has to be disclosed in multiple states that understand this because it's a crime.
They're not into disclosure.
No.
At all.
So if we go back, and you have to report to the IRS if there's been a diversion. You have to say in your Form 990 there has been a diversion.
Yeah.
Okay? So that generally does not excite the positive responses from donors when you say to your form, yeah, I divert money, give me your money anyway. So they didn't report these related party transactions. That's what we just talked about now, with Chelsea maybe going on the board of a company that the Clinton Foundation invested in, if that really did happen.
Hair Gangsters Company, whatever that dude's name was.
That's right, yeah. Always a strong move, which you'll probably find out he changed his name to Gangster.
Yeah.
But, so this explains related parties. It's a fairly complex thing. It's not just as simple as Bill and Hillary. It's members of their family, up generations, down generations, sideways, etc. Indirect and direct relationships. You're basically not allowed to use a charity to create a business. You're not allowed to use a charity to fund your personal opulent lifestyle. You're not allowed to use a charity.
Now wait a minute. So what is this saying about related party transactions?
So it's saying that if you have, I'm on the board of a charity that's got all kinds of money coming into it, right? And I've got this wayward nephew, whatever. I can't employ wayward nephew in the charity unless that person would qualify in a rigorous process to be employed in the charity. You can't overpay a relative. You can't use, let's say you're on the charity, but you've got a travel agency or hearing aid, Starkey Hearing. It's got the Starkey Foundation. You can't set up a foundation to basically build your business. That's not something you can do. For example, you can't do that with Laureate, as an example. You can't pay Bill Clinton $17.6 million and get the Clinton Foundation to do programs that make laureate education, a for-profit enterprise, look good and trick people into thinking it might be sort of charitable. You can't do any of that. And if you even dream about doing that, let's say you get an independent board together to bless it and say, actually, this is all fine.
Yeah.
The people who are connected to the transaction, if they're trustees, they can't vote on it. You have to get truly independent people to look at this and say, considering my duty of care that I follow the law, my duty of loyalty, my duty of obedience as a trustee, putting the Clinton Foundation above all else, its existence, don't want to put it into jeopardy by doing what they did, can I do these things? And they clearly didn't go through that process.
Wow.
So we go back in here. This is an interesting one here. The very thing that Manafort is being accused of doing is failing to register as an agent of a foreign principal.
Right.
Here is the website that defines what that means. This law was promulgated in 1938, or enacted in 1938, as America thought about entering what became World War II. The concern was that our political process would be corrupted by Nazi Germany, in this case, who might employ people of German ancestry.
Prescott Bush, perhaps.
Yeah, people like that. And so there's a process where a foreign principal is either clearly a foreign government or a foreign government-controlled business. And there's a more and more definite. If an American wants to get involved, a non-politician wants to get involved with a foreign principal, the reports that have to be filled out are far more onerous than the reports in the 990 or the PF forms for a charity. You've got to explain what your entity is doing this work. You've got to show the contract. You've got to explain the people who would be on the project. And Lord help you if you fail to make a proper disclosure. So Manafort is being accused of falling afoul of this in his work for the government of Ukraine and others. Right. And there are many firms in Washington, D.C. that do this type of work. Now, if you're, Teneo or an investment bank, or an accounting firm or a law firm, you could do this type of work. But a charity is not supposed to be an agent of a foreign government, right?
Yeah, why would you get U.S. tax exemption if you're working for a foreign government?
As an agent of that government, right? If you want to work,
that's us paying another country,
right? Yeah, providing a benefit to another country. Why should the taxpayer subsidize that?
Right.
It's very clear that a charity cannot be an agent of a foreign government. Yet it is also clear, especially reading through the voluminous, mind-numbing disclosures that are so poorly written of CHI, this Clinton Health Access, they brag about being agent of foreign governments. That's the essence of what they're doing.
Wow.
They formed this drug procurement consortium,
which is also illegal.
To in theory get together these countries around the world that couldn't get the best prices for these drugs,
right?
And that they would lower the prices for the drugs.
They're like the Walgreens of useless AIDS drugs for countries that don't have AIDS problems.
Right, and if you did that and you said, all right, what we're going to do is we're actually going to cause the vendors who provide these drugs to give us the drugs for free, and then that's charitable. But to go and build up Ranbaxy, a company that was in trouble, that was not testing its drugs, the executives had to know that they were in trouble. They wanted to get a bunch of useful idiots, frankly, the Clintons, to say, oh yeah, we'll put our seal of approval on Ranbaxy because Ranbaxy is the one that's going to provide all these generic HIV/AIDS drugs. Bill needs this. He won't understand that he was played by the Indians. They used...
Wait, Bill Clinton was played?
He was played.
By why? I thought that Ranbaxy was part of the Clinton scheme.
Well, so what happened was, Bill, the way the fraudsters...
It's like a double swindle?
That's why this is such an interesting tale, to figure out who is the biggest fraudster. Find the biggest fraudster. See, Bill was, you think about it, he's booted out of the White House in disgrace, right?
He finished out his term.
No, but I'm saying he pardons Mark Rich. Even Jimmy Carter was pissed off about Bill Clinton and all. Democrats did not appreciate that. Meanwhile, McKinsey was blowing up, Enron was blowing up, and Rajat Gupta And there was actually an earthquake, so a portion of India did blow up. And so Rajat Gupta was on the outs, Bill Clinton was on the outs. They supported each other like two falling down drunks. They put together this America-India Foundation. Rajat got to know Bill a little bit better and said, oh, you know, you should fight HIV/AIDS. You know, we know this company, literally, they're working for Ranbaxy. They knew Ranbaxy was in trouble, had a big market value, but you know, the insiders at Ranbaxy had to know that when 50% or so of your revenues are going to the US and you're not testing any of your drugs, you could have some contingent liability.
So it's interesting that they then target a known corrupt charity to sort of solve their financial problems, because it's almost like when somebody like robs a criminal, like you can't call the cops.
Right, exactly.
What are you going to do?
Some do that though. There's some very funny stories when they go, hey, my drug, I paid $40 for this meth. It's not good
They
enough.
call the cops.
But anyway, so we got Manafort. We got this big trial, you know, and who, by the way, who was head of the FBI from September 4th, 2001 to September 4th, 2013?
I think it was a guy named Bob, if I'm not mistaken.
Bob the non-builder Mueller.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he missed, in theory, all this fraud. He missed the Ranbaxy stuff in full. He missed the Clinton Foundation stuff for sure. And you're going to go after Manafort for failing to register as a foreign principal and for tax fraud of like 20 million or something like that, or 40 million. And you're not going to go after, you know, Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton and Hillary Clinton and all of the fraudsters who've been building up this Clinton Foundation fraud and the network of fraudulent charities, supporting it for all these years. You're not going to go after that? And you think that the American public is going to say, even if the Manafort case is 100% provable and he's guilty, the American public is not going to say, okay, you did Manafort, but you gave the Clintons a pass and the Obama Foundation a pass, and that's okay. The American public is never going to stand for that.
Yeah.
And more to the point, there's another code section identified in FARA here, 18 USC 219. Okay, it's a conflict of interest statute. This is directly taken from the link here, okay, where, which makes it a criminal offense for a public official of the United States in the well, I needed actually.
Oh, sorry.
To read the slide, sorry. In the executive, legislative, or judicial branches to be or to act as an agent of a foreign principal required to register under FARA. Okay, this does not apply to special government employees who register under FARA and obtain certification from the head of the employing agency. In other words, Chuck Grassley, let me bring this right home. Chuck Grassley, the great Chuck Grassley, senator of Iowa, has been on this question of how Uma Abedin and Cheryl Mills and so many others in the State Department, why were they made special government employees? Who authorized that? And it says here the head of the agency will do that authorization. That would be Hillary Clinton.
Huh.
So this could be why there's no inspector general at the State Department while Hillary is running the State Department, because she figures the way around all this corruption problems is to we'll make Uma, we'll make Mills, we'll make these other people special government employees so that they can be agents of foreign principals.
Without registering.
Without registering, and we'll let Uma in particular simultaneously work for Teneo, a for-profit company, for the Clintons personally, for the Clinton Foundation, and for the taxpayer. And I mean, come on. That is so gross.
Yeah.
And then, you know, James Comey, what's the book that he wrote?
Higher authority, higher loyalty.
I think it should be a lower loyalty, lies, lies, and even more lies. I mean, how the hell does James Comey make the decision, does his Justice Department and the FBI make the decision that it's okay to have Hillary Clinton, you know, waddle into some room over wherever it was on a weekend with her lawyers and co-conspirators and pretend to answer questions? You know, it's just, given the nature of this long-standing pattern and practice of corruption, this is so odious.
It's really crazy.
And yet, it's, you know, the pay-to-play is the Clinton, Bush, Obama way. I mean, this has been going on since 1989, in my opinion, if not beforehand.
Yeah.
So if we go to the final page, and we'll maybe wrap it up quickly. Okay. Of course, I don't even want to put this link up here. I don't want to give Adam Schiff any more airtime than he already gets. But of course, Adam Schiff is going to say immediately with a Trump tweet about wind up the Mueller probe, that Trump is obstructing justice. So that's what the news.
I'm shocked that Adam Schiff knows this word.
No, he's academically smart, but he's just got no moral compass, and he's corrupt as hell, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Makes him perfectly well suited to be maybe ultimately a senator from California, if not in the Supreme Court under the Kamala Harris administration one day.
Oh.
So we've put this up before, so no need to put it up again. But here's the link for the new viewers to the investigation, the non-investigation investigation of the Clinton Foundation, 2001 to 2005. You can see for yourself what they did. And the parties involved were Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein. Rosenstein was at the Justice Department. Comey was in Rosenstein's current job, and before that, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District. And, you know, this is just, it's unthinkable that these people who missed the Clinton Foundation fraud, what was only, call it round numbers, 100 million, you know, and then allowed it to flourish and allowed it to get to the point where it's now, you know, toxic to the core, cancerous to the core, up in the billions of dollars, that these people would be the same people connected to an investigation of the Trump administration that's trying to drain the swamp. That's ridiculous.
They are the swamp.
Yeah. And here's ABC, you know, it's not, again, right-wing media, writing a story to their credit that Mueller and Trump have a nasty historical relationship. So there's bad blood between Mueller, this one here. If you can't pull it up, it's all right.
No, I've got it here.
Yeah. Right, this is ABC News, you know, not Fox. No.
Yeah.
Right? Saying,
always broadcasting crap.
Yeah, exactly. So,
what's the historical relationship between?
I think it had something to do with a golf club. And I also think, you know, Mueller wanted to be head of the FBI, and Trump turned him down.
He already was head of the FBI.
Stay on, in other words. No, he had been. Then he left in 2013.
But then he wanted to come back and do it again.
And Trump said no.
No way. Yeah.
So anyway, we need to understand. I mean, it certainly looks like a.
But the fact that he even wanted that position seems like he was jockeying to get in there to do this monkey business behind the scenes.
Right.
No matter what.
Right. So if we go back in,
that's like the DC crew of people who are gonna like do what needs to be done.
Right. So this is a long story. Let's not put the link up, but this is a long story that just came out today that explains that this Ocasio-Cortez's long-standing relationship with many others to a George Soros-funded effort to get people elected. They wanted to get 400 people running in this 2018 election, but they didn't succeed. They only have 29. And I think with this and other disclosures, AOC is bye in my opinion. Even if she wins the election, she's going to have a very rough time in Congress.
Wasn't she like totally unable to answer pretty simple questions?
That would probably put her at like the
Adam Schiff level.
Yes, he's like the dean of he's a ranking member of the in quotes Intelligence Committee. But now,
yeah, right.
Look at this. We talked about this before, but I want to repeat it. 14th Amendment, Section 3. I think Donald Trump has an insurrection and a rebellion on his hand. And the way I read this is in the Constitution. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or an elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, people like that, as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature, Barack Obama, or as any executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. You tell me Mad Maxine Waters is not engaged in an insurrection or rebellion. You tell me that these Chuck Schumer and these other people are not involved in an insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution.
They're instructing people to resist the elected president.
Or worse. You know, we have now this, frankly, an idiot, Christine Todd Whitman, a Republican, former governor, I think, of New Jersey saying he's unfit to serve, he ought to stand down. I think, you know, the people around Donald Trump need to take a tough look at 14th Amendment, Section 3, and ask themselves, you know, if a real insurrection or rebellion were to break out, if we had somebody like a George Soros funneling money to instigate riots around the country.
Isn't he doing that?
Yeah, at what point does the President of the United States have an obligation
To arrest that guy.
Well, to stop it, right? And what I think we have here corrupt globalists in government. It's much more fun to be, if you're just a national senator, that's the same as being, a global figure. You can be on multinational boards, you get involved in Davos, maybe you go on some rich guy's fund or whatever. You want to be a globalist. You don't want to be a nationalist, in the old way of thinking. Besides, globalists are lionized at Yale and Harvard and Princeton, Columbia, and all this, Oxford, Cambridge. These career globalists who have been feeding their families on this cronyism, this corruption, have to be identified and they have to be prosecuted. The idea that Hillary Clinton might know about Manafort and what was going on, and that the Trump team didn't know. If Manafort was doing stuff that was bad, at some point as a candidate, he should have gotten the same briefing that Hillary Clinton's team may have gotten, directly or indirectly, about Manafort. So here's Trump slamming the FBI for saying, look, if you knew that Manafort was under investigation, you should have told me when I was running. Now, I don't know about the timeline here exactly, if that's true.
Is that an accurate statement that they should have told him?
It depends on the timeline. If in the very beginning, if before he's a serious candidate or before he's likely to be the candidate, it's one thing. If he's clinched the number of delegates through the primaries and facing the convention, which is, I think, in the period where Manafort was so crucial, he should have had a briefing.
Just to go back to your previous comment, Charles, isn't it interesting that they have now Hillary Clinton in that alt-right speech, which was the first time I ever heard the term alt-right, where she mentioned Alex Jones, they've made the word nationalist synonymous with Nazi.
Well, you're not going to get away with it. I think not you, but nationalism is something that makes tremendous sense. I mean, my starting place is individual, then couple, then family, then block, then community, then county, then state, and then nation. Before we rush to think about being globalists, let's start with making sure that our individuals are okay, then the pairs are okay, etc. And I think it is absolutely irresponsible to embrace this idea of unregulated globalism, abandoning the protections that we the people have in the largest, most vibrant, safest country in the world, large country in the world, to get in bed with a bunch of George Soros financed wacko bird globalists. And this it is unacceptable to have a serious debate where you disagree with somebody saying you're a Nazi, or you're a Zionist, or you're this, or you're that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about charity fraud here. And I for one am quite interested in setting up something, maybe encouraging, an international network in 20 countries of magazines or organizations that promote the nation state of America, the nation state of Canada, the nation state of Australia, the nation state, help these nation states learn from our example, and maybe we learn from them too. There's nothing wrong with having a system of powerful nation states. It's a good idea, in my opinion.
Right.
If we can go, So we've got a big piece of news here. If we hit that this is a story from earlier today. I've talked to the crowd before about this 10-year Treasury note. Okay, that's what investors use as a benchmark of saying, look, if I don't want to think too much about some capital and I want to just put it away and know that I'm going to get my money back and that it's a liquid security, if I want to sell out at any time, I can do that. The 10-year Treasury, for its yield to get above 3%, is an ominous sign.
Why? What does it mean?
Because for a long time it's been well under 3%, and once you get above 3%, it means that we could be changing people's interest in whether they really want, whether they think this 3% is enough. Prior to December 31st, 2008, for a long period of time, that 10-year yield was 4.5%, 5%. Okay, we've been down on the floor. It was down as low as 1%, 1 point some odd percent for a while. But now we seem to be going upwards, The United States has a lot of borrowing requirements. Yeah, this is just recent history. But if
This is July.
yeah,
Wow.
what I'm saying, this doesn't give you the long historical.
Oh, I see. Right. Maybe if we zoom out?
No, you have to go get a different. Don't worry about it. But the point is, I watched this very carefully, and I actually think higher interest rates are a good idea. For too long, interest rates have been too low.
Irresponsible lending.
And people have been borrowing irresponsibly, buying
Yeah.
things they really couldn't afford, not thinking through things carefully, not understanding that debts eventually do have to get repaid. And so I think it's going to hurt the people who've been unwisely speculating with leveraged money. But this is something to keep your eye on. If you have any interest in the market, watch this carefully to see whether we start going from 3 up, or whether this spooks the market so much that the Fed decides, well, we better not tighten too much. So this is going to be a big story, and we can close by saying some good news. I think that we can all get quite used to saying the words Justice Kavanaugh. I think he will be confirmed.
But is he a good guy? Larry Klayman was telling me that this guy basically disregarded the Constitution and was not good.
I'm not a lawyer, so I haven't read 300 opinions of Kavanaugh, but just judging by the summaries I'm reading, I think he is a decent guy.
Okay.
But if Klayman has a specific point that he wants to bring to my attention,
I'll have to go back and rewatch the day that he got nominated or whatever.
So the issue here is that the Senate is supposed to give its advice and then consent to a Supreme Court nominee. And there's a rigorous screening process. Donald Trump did not run for office and say, I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to appoint. He put together a list. He circulated it broadly. The American electorate knew the names on that list. One of them was Brett Kavanaugh. And so people have had a long time to study this. The question normally is, and this is what happened under Barack Obama, much as I and others felt that, for example, Elena Kagan was not forthcoming in her testimony, in her, not to mention, that guy wasn't confirmed for Supreme Court, but she was certainly not forthcoming, in my opinion. And nonetheless, Republicans let her through. The question is, you may disagree with the slant of somebody's ideology, personal ideology, but the question is, can this person be a fair and neutral judge? Can this person apply the law to the facts as are laid before the court and arrive at decisions that are sensible and that will stand the test of time and won't be overturned? That's the real question. It's virtually impossible to mount a credible argument against Kavanaugh to say that he's not qualified. I mean, he has issued tons of opinions. He has a very good track record on a lower court of the Supreme Court looking at his opinions and saying, yeah, that guy's pretty good. I think I'll use that one. So my view, barring unforeseen developments, I think we can get used to saying Justice Kavanaugh, and I think that is going to really make heads explode as we go for this next 60, 90-day period, whatever it is, 90-odd-day period through the election. I think we are going to go through a barn burner period where there's going to be, you think the mud has been thrown before, the mud is being towed from Mud Central, wherever that may be.
Oh yeah, there was some kerfuffle over ordering mud from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the mud is
Korea. They ordered Korean mud for the Mud Festival.
Is that right? Yeah, there was recently in New Jersey some kind of mud festival.
About a mud festival that was corrupt, ordering mud from Korea.
Well, we can expect there's a lot of mud coming our way, and meanwhile, I think there's going to be a lot of energy from the Trump team going the other way. And it's time for the Trump administration, which I think has been too patient with Sessions and Rosenstein and the IRS, it's time to get super serious about charity fraud, and in particular, about stopping the Clintons from raising another nickel illegally, using the mail, using telephone, using the internet. And I hope those who've been watching patiently through this show and our various shows, if you want to do anything beyond sending some money towards Crowdsource the Truth, various ways that I'm sure Jason will explain, reach out and ask your legislators, ask people, why aren't they prosecuting these Clinton Foundation frauds? Why aren't you doing anything about it?
Yeah.
When are we going to see justice?
Larry Nichols put together a great list of phone numbers of the representatives
good.
on his nicholslive.com website, so people can use that resource if they're looking for a simple way to find it. But Charles, I've got to thank you. Each presentation is just like more powerful and damning than the next. I feel like if this were a court case, we could just have you go on for like 2 weeks, and then the Clintons would just have nothing to say and they could be thrown right in jail. But I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to thank everyone for watching. It is the 1st of August today, so it's a new month. And I want to welcome new Patreon sponsors, people who have been logging on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And even people that are sponsoring just $1 a month are getting access to a lot of new, exclusive, only on Patreon content that I'm offering there. And we're going to be adding some more gifts and things for sponsors. I'm going to go into the mug store. People can go to redbubble.com and purchase swag. While we were going here, people were saying they want this image in the Redbubble store. So I'll put it there and people can get it there, and then I'll figure out a way to make it a reward for a certain level of sponsorship. But it helps quite a lot if people go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a monthly sponsor. So Charles, I want to thank you very much. I'll see you on Sunday for Sunday with Charles. And actually tomorrow, Thursday at 7 p.m., we're going to have an only on Patreon show with Kevin Shipp. That'll be the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp. So if people want to get onto Patreon now and don't miss that show, I'll see everybody tomorrow.